A man lies dead in a river. A lance through his heart, blood mixing with water. Hours later, his eyes open. Fire spreads through his veins. He gasps his first breath of a second life. But this is only the beginning. 6 times he will die. 6 times flames will drag him back from darkness, and with each return, pieces of himself will vanish like smoke. His mother's face, his childhood home, the sound of his own laughter, until nothing remains but a name and a burning purpose he cannot escape. This is the story of Beric Dondarrion, the Lightning Lord, the man who forgot everything except how to die. In the Riverlands, where war turns golden fields to ash and rivers run red with the blood of the innocent, one knight will rise again and again to stand between the wicked and the weak, armed with a sword that burns with holy fire, leading outlaws who answer to no king. He will become legend. But legend demands sacrifice, and Beric Dondarrion will pay a price no man should ever have to bear. 7 deaths, 7 resurrections, and with the 7th, a choice that will create something far darker than himself. But before we begin this journey into the cost of borrowed time and the weight of divine purpose, I need to mention something. A staggering 84% of you watching right now haven't subscribed yet. If you find value in these deep dives into the legends of Westeros, hitting that subscribe button truly helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more stories like this. Also, drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing this community span across continents and time zones. Your comments genuinely make my day. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights, settle into your blanket. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background hum. Tonight we walk with a man who dies so others may live. Let's begin. The year is 298. After the conquest, Robert Baratheon sits the Iron Throne. Eddard Stark, Honorable Lord of Winterfell, has just arrived in King's Landing as the newly appointed Hand of the King. The realm appears peaceful. The golden fields of the Riverlands stretch endlessly beneath summer skies. The Trident runs clear and cold. Villagers prosper. Farmers tend their crops. Children play in streets that will soon run with blood. This is the calm before the storm. The last breath before the War of the Five Kings tears Westeros apart. In the south, in the Dornish marches where the Stormlands meet Dawn, stands Blackhaven, an ancient castle of grey stone, its towers reaching toward the sky like accusatory fingers. Here rules House Dondarrion, an old and noble line stretching back thousands of years. Their sigil is a purple lightning bolt forking across a field of black scattered with stars, a fitting symbol for a house whose legend speaks of an ancestor who fought in a terrible storm, lightning striking his sword as he claimed victory from certain death. The current lord of this house is young, 21, perhaps 22 years old. His name is Beric Dondarrion, and he is everything a knight should be. Handsome, with black hair that catches the light and striking purple eyes inherited from ancient Valyrian blood mixed into his lineage generations ago. Tall and well-built from years of training in the yard, skilled with sword and lance, having won honors at several tourneys across the realm. He wears his armor with easy grace, and his purple cloak bearing the lightning sigil flows behind him like a banner of pride. But more than his appearance, Beric possesses something rarer among the nobility: idealism. He believes in the songs, believes that justice will prevail, that the law exists to protect the weak, that nobility carries the sacred duty to serve the realm. His heroes are the greatest knights of legend. Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, whose skill was unmatched. Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, who exemplified honor and sacrifice. Beric dreams of being remembered like them, of songs sung about his deeds, of a legacy built on justice and courage. He has no idea that songs will indeed be sung about him. But they will be songs of tragedy, of a man who died 7 times, of a knight who forgot his own face but never forgot his duty, of a lord who became a hollow instrument of divine will, scraped clean of everything that made him human, except the burning need to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The hand of the king is about to summon him, and nothing will ever be the same. Beric Dondarrion was raised in a world of stone and duty. The Dornish marches are not gentle lands. They breed a specific kind of nobility, one tempered by constant vigilance. For generations the Marcher Lords have stood as the first line of defense against Dornish raids. Blackhaven, perched in those unforgiving mountains, has seen more blood spilled on its walls than most castles in Westeros. From the time he could walk, Beric trained in the yard. Wooden swords became steel, practiced dummies became sparring partners. His father and his father before him understood that survival in the marches demands excellence. There is no room for weakness when Dornish raiders might appear at dawn, seeking revenge for ancient grievances that stretch back to before the conquest. But Beric absorbed more than martial skill during those formative years. He learned the stories. Every great house passes down its legends, but House Dondarrion's carried particular weight. The tale of how their sigil came to be spoke of an ancestor fighting in a thunderstorm against impossible odds. As the story goes, lightning struck his raised sword at the moment of his greatest desperation, and in that flash of divine intervention, he turned certain defeat into legendary victory. Whether the tale held literal truth or symbolic meaning, Beric believed in what it represented. The idea that righteousness could be rewarded, that standing for justice, even against overwhelming darkness, might summon powers beyond mortal understanding. These were not just stories to him. They were blueprints for how a true knight should live. As he grew into manhood, Beric became everything his house could hope for. Handsome in a way that turned heads at feasts and tournaments alike. His purple eyes, rare even among the nobility, marked him as someone special. That distant Valyrian ancestry, diluted through centuries but still present in those striking violet irises, made him stand out in any gathering. More importantly, he possessed genuine skill. Tournament circuits across the Stormlands, and Reach knew his name, not because he won every contest, but because he fought with honor and capability that earned respect. His swordwork was clean and efficient, his jousting solid. He understood that true prowess came not from flashy showmanship, but from disciplined technique, honed through endless repetition. Yet what truly defined young Beric Dondarrion was something increasingly rare among the highborn: idealism untainted by cynicism. He genuinely believed in the songs, in the tales of Sir Arthur Dane, wielding Dawn against the Kingswood Brotherhood, bringing justice to the small folk terrorized by outlaws, in Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight's unwavering devotion to duty, even when it cost him everything he personally desired. These were not abstract concepts to Beric. They were models to emulate. He saw his position as Lord of Blackhaven not as a privilege to exploit, but as a responsibility to shoulder. The small folk who worked his lands, who looked to him for protection and justice, deserved a lord who would sacrifice for them, rather than demand sacrifice from them. His household knights recognized this quality in him. Some admired it. Others, more weathered by reality's harsh edges, worried it would get him killed. Idealists tend to charge into situations pragmatists would avoid. They take stands on principle when survival demands compromise. In early 298, Beric traveled to King's Landing. King Robert had summoned lords to attend court, and as a young nobleman eager to make his mark, Beric answered that call. The capital overwhelmed him, at first, the sheer scale of it. The political maneuvering that seemed to infect every conversation, the way justice appeared malleable, depending on whose purse carried more gold. But he also witnessed something that gave him hope. Lord Eddard Stark, newly arrived as Hand of the King, brought a different energy to the Red Keep. Here was a man who actually meant what he said, who refused to bend his principles even when surrounded by those who viewed principles as tools to be discarded when inconvenient. Beric watched from the edges of court as Ned Stark quietly worked to bring actual justice to King's Landing, investigating corruption, protecting the innocent, standing firm against those who would abuse their power. It reinforced everything Beric believed about how nobility should function. During this time, Beric also encountered Thoros of Myr at various feasts and gatherings. The Red Priest was impossible to miss. Tall, loud, perpetually drunk, famous for his flaming sword trick that he performed at tournaments. Thoros would coat his blade in wildfire and ignite it before charging into melee, terrifying opponents with the spectacle. Most dismissed Thoros as a drunken joke, a priest who had abandoned his mission to convert Westerosi to ruler worship in favor of wine and violence. Beric paid him little attention, just another colorful character in a capital full of them. He had no way of knowing that this drunk would become the most important person in his life, that those prayers Thoros mumbled between cups of wine would one day drag Beric back from death itself, that the Lord of Light whom Thoros served so poorly would choose Beric as an instrument of divine will. The tourney of the hand provided Beric another opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities. He acquitted himself well in the lists, though he did not win overall honors. Still, lords noticed him, respected him. Here was a young man who combined skill with genuine nobility of spirit. Everything stretched before him. A future as Lord of Blackhaven, eventually a good marriage to continue his line. Children who would inherit his lands and carry forward House Dondarrion's ancient legacy, a life of service and honor, protecting the marches as his ancestors had for thousands of years. Then Eddard Stark called him to the throne room, and the life Beric Dondarrion had imagined evaporated like morning mist under the sun. The Iron Throne looms over everyone who enters its presence. 1,000 swords, melted and twisted together by dragonfire, forming a seat that appears designed to murder whoever sits upon it. But on this particular day in 298, the throne sits empty. King Robert is away hunting, his favorite pastime and convenient excuse to avoid the tedious business of actually ruling. Instead, Eddard Stark occupies the position of authority, the hand seat placed at the base of the throne steps from which he dispenses the king's justice in Robert's absence. Ned looks uncomfortable with even this much power. He is a man built for Winterfell's Great Hall, for the North's straightforward problems and ancient codes. King's Landing's serpentine politics leave him perpetually off balance. But when justice needs doing, Ned Stark will not shirk the responsibility. Beric enters the throne room with perhaps 24 other lords and knights. He does not know why he has been summoned. The messenger simply said the hand required his presence. As he waits among the others, curiosity mingles with slight unease. Court summons can mean opportunity or disaster, and you never know which until the words are spoken. Ned's face carries an expression Beric will remember for the rest of his considerably extended life. Fury barely contained beneath northern stoicism, the kind of anger that comes not from personal insult, but from witnessing injustice so profound it demands response. The hand speaks without preamble. His voice carries clearly through the cavernous hall, each word sharp as a blade. The king's peace has been shattered in the Riverlands. Ser Clegane, called the mountain that rides, stands accused of murder, rape, and destruction on a scale that cannot be tolerated. Beric knows of Gregor Clegane. Everyone does. Nearly 8 feet of meat and muscle stuffed into plate armor, wielding a sword most men could not lift with both hands, more beast than man, with a reputation for cruelty that makes hardened soldiers whisper. Ned continues, laying out the charges. The village of Shera, burned to its foundations. Every man, woman and child slaughtered, not in battle, but in a deliberate massacre. Wendish town suffered similarly. Homes torched, women violated before being killed, children cut down as they ran. Then the Mummers Ford, a river crossing where merchants and travelers met their end. Gregor's men ambushed them, stealing goods and leaving corpses to float downstream as warnings. The litany of atrocities stretches on, each crime worse than the last. Beric feels his stomach tightening. This is not war. This is butchery, the kind of evil that demands response. Eddard Stark's voice grows harder as he pronounces sentence. In the name of Robert of the House Baratheon, first of his name, I charge you to ride to the Riverlands, find Sir Gregor Clegane, strip him of all rank and titles, bring him to the king's justice to answer for his crimes. If he resists, kill him. The words hang in the air like an executioner's blade. This is no mere investigation. This is a death warrant that needs delivering. Then Ned looks directly at Beric. Lord Dondarrion, you will lead this mission. Choose your men wisely. For just a heartbeat, Beric feels the weight of what has been asked. Leading soldiers against the mountain that rides, a man who has killed more people than most armies, but the hesitation lasts only that single heartbeat. This is what he has trained for, what he believes in. The strong protecting the weak, justice for those who cannot seek it themselves. Every lesson from every story, every ideal he has tried to embody, demands he accept this charge without question. I will serve the king's justice, Lord Stark, Beric says. His voice remains steady. Inside, excitement and nervousness war for dominance, but he shows neither. Over the following hours, the company assembles 100 men total. Ned provides 20 Stark soldiers, Northmen loyal and capable. Various lords volunteer men and themselves. Lord Lothar Mallory steps forward, eager to serve. Sir Raymond Darry, whose own lands have suffered from the raiding, practically demands inclusion. Then Thoros of Mar volunteers. The drunken Red Priest, seeing an opportunity for the kind of violence he enjoys. Beric accepts because Thoros, for all his failings as a priest, is genuinely dangerous in combat. That flaming sword trick intimidates opponents, and behind the spectacle lies real skill. The company gathers weapons and provisions. Maps of the Riverlands are studied. The plan seems straightforward. Ride north along the King's Road, reach the Riverlands, find Gregor Clegane, execute the Hand's justice. Simple, clean, the kind of mission perfect for a young lord eager to prove himself. They depart King's Landing on a clear morning. Purple lightning banners flying beside the grey dire wolf of House Stark. 100 men riding to restore order to chaos. Beric sits his horse with the confidence of someone who has never truly faced death, who believes skill and righteousness will carry the day. The King's Road stretches north through pleasant countryside. For the first few days, travel proves uneventful. The men sing, share stories, sharpen weapons more from habit than necessity. Beric feels the weight of command, but also its thrill. These men look to him for leadership, and he is determined not to disappoint. But, as they push deeper toward the Riverlands, the landscape changes. Smoke appears on distant horizons. Not the clean smoke of hearth fires, but the greasy black columns of burning homes. Refugees begin appearing on the road. Families fleeing south, carrying whatever possessions they could grab before fire consumed the rest. Beric orders halts to speak with them. Their stories chill him. Entire villages destroyed. Raiders coming without warning, without mercy. The mountain's men, they say. Sometimes the mountain himself, gigantic and terrible on his equally massive warhorse. The refugees beg Beric to turn back, warn him that what awaits in the north is not a single rogue knight but an army of killers, that 100 men will not be enough. But Beric pushes forward. He has his orders. More than that, he has his beliefs. Justice must be served. The innocent must be protected. To turn back now would be to abandon everything he claims to stand for. As they near the Mummer's Ford, Thoros drinks more heavily than usual, muttering prayers in his strange accent, clutching the ruby that hangs at his throat. The other men grow quieter, check their weapons repeatedly, sleep fitfully in camp. Beric lies awake that final night, staring at stars through tree branches, sensing, though he could not explain how, that dawn will bring something that changes everything. He is right, but the change will be more profound than he could possibly imagine. Morning arrives cold and gray. Mist rises from the river, turning the world ghostly and uncertain. The Mummer's Ford lies ahead, its waters running swift and shallow enough for horses to cross. Trees crowd both banks, their branches hanging low over the current. Perfect country for an ambush, if one were inclined to such tactics. Beric's scouts return with troubling news, signs of recent activity, with tracks indicating a large force passed through recently, but no direct sighting of Gregor or his men. The sensible choice would be to proceed with extreme caution. Perhaps send forward a small advance party, while the main force hangs back, ready to respond to whatever develops. But Beric is young, eager, and convinced that righteousness provides its own protection. He orders the company forward, 100 men beginning to cross the ford, horses picking their way through the current, water splashing up against plate armor and mail. They are halfway across when hell arrives. The attack comes from both sides simultaneously, mounted knights exploding from the tree line, lances lowering as warhorses charge. The thunder of hooves mingles with shouted war cries. Arrows begin falling like deadly rain, fired from archers hidden in the woods. Beric's company is caught in the worst possible position. In the water, unable to maneuver, exposed and vulnerable. The ford that seemed like simple terrain transforms into a killing ground. Gregor Clegane did not come alone. He brought more than 50 mounted knights, veterans hardened by years of brutality, against Beric's 100 men, many of whom are on foot. The numbers might seem close to even, but combat rarely respects simple mathematics. The mountain's men crash into Beric's company like a hammer against glass. Lances punch through armor, lifting men from saddles and driving them into the river. Horses scream and thrash. Men in full plate are dragged under by the current, drowning before they can even draw weapons. Beric tries to rally his men, shouting orders that can barely be heard over the chaos. His sword comes free, and he spurs his horse toward the nearest enemy. Training takes over, muscle memory from thousands of hours in the practice yard. He catches a lance on his shield, angles it away, drives his blade into the gap between an enemy knight's breastplate and pauldron. First blood, first kill. The man topples from his saddle with a scream cut short by water filling his lungs. But for every enemy that falls, 3 of Beric's men die. Lord Lothar Mallory takes a lance directly through his chest. The impact lifts him completely out of his saddle before dropping him into the ford. His blood spreads in dark ribbons downstream. Sir Raymond Darry fights viciously, taking 2 enemies with him before a mace crushes his skull. The sound carries even through the battle's roar, wet and final. Sir Gladden Wild manages to reach the far bank, only to have his throat opened by a sword thrust. He clutches at the wound uselessly, trying to hold his life inside, but it pumps between his fingers and he collapses into mud that turns red beneath him. The Stark men fight with northern stubbornness, refusing to break even as their numbers thin. But stubbornness cannot stop steel. They are cut down methodically, efficiently, by men who kill for a living and feel nothing doing it. Thoros of Myr proves why his reputation extends beyond drunkenness. His flaming sword becomes a beacon in the chaos. He speaks prayers to Ruslor between sword strokes, and enemies actually fall back from the spectacle of that burning blade. Real skill backs the showmanship. He cuts through Gregor's men with practiced ease, trying desperately to carve a path to where Beric fights. But the Red Priest cannot be everywhere at once. Gregor Clegane enters the battle like a natural disaster given human form. Nearly 8 feet of pure violence encased in custom plate armor thick enough to stop most blows entirely. His sword, a great sword that would require 2 normal men to wield, swings in lazy arcs that bisect anyone unlucky enough to be in its path. He cuts through Beric's men like they are not wearing armor at all. The sheer force behind his strikes simply overwhelms metal and flesh. Horses go down with their riders. Men are trampled under the mountain's warhorse, a beast nearly as monstrous as its master. Beric sees him coming, sees death approaching on horseback. Everything in his body screams to run, survival instinct demanding he flee while flight remains possible. But he is Lord Beric Dondarrion of Blackhaven. He believes in justice, in duty, in standing firm against darkness, no matter the cost. He spurs his horse toward the mountain. Gregor's laugh rumbles like distant thunder. "You first, boy." They close on each other. Beric raises his sword, knowing his skill means nothing against this opponent's sheer physical superiority. But he has to try, has to stand, has to fight. Gregor's first swing forces Beric to duck so low he nearly leaves his saddle. The blade passes close enough that Beric feels the wind of its passage. He counters with a thrust toward Gregor's face, aiming for the eyes lit in the massive helm. The mountain moves faster than something that large should be able to move, turns the thrust with his shield, then reverses his grip and drives forward. Not with the sword, with a lance, a jousting lance still hanging from his saddle. Massive and deadly, Beric never sees it coming. His focus is on the sword, on the shield, on trying to find any opening in that wall of armor and muscle. The lance point catches him directly in the chest, punches through his breastplate like it is paper, drives through flesh and bone and everything vital beneath. The tip emerges from his back, a foot of bloody steel. Time does something strange, slows to a crawl that lets Beric experience every microsecond of his death. The cold, spreading from the wound outward like winter creeping across a landscape, his arms lose strength. The sword falls from nerveless fingers. His legs stop responding to commands. He slides from his saddle, seems to fall forever, hits the water with a splash that sounds oddly gentle given the violence surrounding it. The current pulls at him. He floats on his back, lance still through his chest, staring up at tree branches and sky beyond. Blood flowers around him in the water, beautiful in a terrible way, like red paint spreading through clear liquid. His final thoughts come fragmented and fading. Failure. He failed Ned Stark's trust. Failed the mission. Failed the small folk who needed justice. Then, darkness. Not the darkness of closing your eyes. The absolute darkness of extinction. The nothing that comes when a heart stops beating and a brain ceases firing. Beric Dondarrion dies in the Mummer's Ford, 22 years old, full of ideals and courage that proved insufficient against the reality of Gregor Clegane's brutality. His body floats downstream slightly before catching on rocks, eyes open and empty, the purple lightning sigil on his cloak spreading in the current like wings. Dead, completely and absolutely dead. No breath, no heartbeat, no consciousness, nothing but cooling meat. The battle continues around his corpse. The mountain's men finish the slaughter of 100 men who rode north in the king's name. Fewer than 20 escape into the woods. Thoros survives, watches from the tree line as Gregor's forces finally withdraw, satisfied with their butchery, waits until only corpses remain in the ford. Then he wades back into the water, searching among the dead for his commander. For the young lord who believed songs were more than just entertainment. He finds Beric caught on the rocks, pulls the body to the bank with difficulty, removes the lance with a wet sound that makes even the hardened priest flinch. The wound is catastrophic. No one survives having their heart destroyed. The medical reality is absolute. Thoros stares at the corpse, at the empty purple eyes, at the blood-soaked armor, at the waste of young life, and begins to weep, not for faith lost, but for innocence destroyed, for idealism murdered in cold water. He does not expect what happens next, has no faith that anything will happen at all. But the Lord of Light has plans, and those plans require Beric Dondarrion to serve a while longer. The other survivors huddle in the trees, too terrified to approach the ford where their friends lie butchered. 20 men from a company of 100, they watch Thoros drag bodies from the water. Watch him arrange the noble dead on the riverbank with whatever dignity he can muster in this charnel house. Thoros has performed funeral rites countless times. In Mai, before he came to Westeros, during his early years trying to convert the faithless to Ristlor's worship, at tournaments where men died from wounds that seemed minor until infection set in. The words have become routine, muscle memory of the mouth, rather than genuine communion with the divine. He kneels beside Beric's corpse. The young lord's face has already begun taking on the waxy quality of death. Purple eyes still open, staring at nothing. The massive wound through his chest speaks of finality. Hearts do not recover from being pulped by lance tips. The Red Priest should feel nothing but grief and guilt, should curse himself for not protecting this idealistic boy better, should wonder how he will explain to Lord Stark that the Hand's chosen champion died in his first real battle. Instead, something else stirs beneath those practical concerns, something Thoros has not felt in years, perhaps has never truly felt despite wearing a priest's robes and speaking a priest's words. Faith. Real, genuine, desperate faith. His hands shake as he places them on Beric's cold chest. The ruby at his throat catches sunlight, seeming to pulse with inner warmth. Thoros has worn that gem for so long he barely notices it anymore. Just ornamentation marking his status as a priest of Rule. But now it feels hot against his skin. The words come differently this time. Not rote recitation, but genuine prayer. Lord of Light, defend us. For the night is dark and full of terrors. His voice cracks. Tears stream down his face, mixing with blood spatter and river water. We offer you this man, this good man who died trying to bring justice to the innocent. The other survivors edge closer, drawn by something in Thoros's tone. They have heard priests pray before. This sounds different, raw, naked. Let him be reborn in light, in warmth, in life. Not because he deserves it, though he does. Not because I ask it, though I beg. But because your light should not be extinguished from this world. Thoros leans forward, pressing his forehead against Beric's bloody chest. The physical intimacy of grief and prayer combined. Please, please bring him back. Nothing happens. The rational part of Thoros's mind knew nothing would happen. Dead is dead. The priests in Mai speak of resurrection as metaphor, spiritual rebirth, not literal return from extinction. Their magic manifests in flames and visions, not in reversing death itself. He begins to pull away. already composing the letter he will have to write to Blackhaven, informing Lord Dondarrion's family that their son died well, but died nonetheless. Then Beric gasps. The sound cuts through the clearing like a blade. Every man freezes. Several stumble backward in terror. One falls to his knees, whether in prayer or shock is unclear. Beric's chest wound begins closing, not healing in any normal sense, sealing itself with smoke and the smell of burning flesh. Fire spreads through his veins, visible beneath pale skin as red light racing along blood vessels. His back arches, mouth opens wide. The gasp becomes a scream of agony as death reverses itself, as cold dead flesh remembers warmth, as a heart destroyed rebuilds itself through means no maester could explain. Thoros scrambles backward, his own scream matching Beric's terror and awe, warring in his expression. Rolla, Lord of Light, it is real. You are real. The fire consumes Beric from within, not destroying but remaking. The lance wound closes completely, leaving only a jagged scar across his chest. Pale skin flushes with color. Lungs inflate with air that moments ago they had no capacity to hold. His eyes, those distinctive purple eyes, snap into focus, no longer the glazed stare of death, but the sharp awareness of life. Beric sits up violently, hands clutching at his chest where the wound was. His fingers find only scar tissue, still hot to the touch. What happened? His voice comes out hoarse, slightly different than it was before. Some fundamental change has occurred in his throat, in his vocal cords, in the physical mechanism of speech. The survivors are backing away. Half have already fled into the woods, convinced they are witnessing dark sorcery. The other half stand frozen between religious ecstasy and pure fear. Thoros alone moves closer. His entire worldview has shattered and reformed in the space of heartbeats. Every drunken year spent in Westeros, every tournament where he swung his wildfire-coated sword more for spectacle than faith, every moment of cynicism about the religion he was supposed to spread, all of it burns away in the face of what just happened. You died, Thoros says simply. You were dead, I prayed, Rethlor answered. Beric's hands explore his body as if it belongs to someone else, finding the scar, feeling his heartbeat, strong and steady, testing limbs that respond to commands. I remember dying, the lance, the cold, then nothing, just darkness. No afterlife? Thoros asks, though he is not sure he wants the answer. Nothing, Beric repeats. His expression suggests this troubles him more than dying did. Just dark, then fire pulling me back, pain everywhere, and now this. He struggles to his feet. His legs shake but hold. The survivors still present fall to their knees. Whether worshipping Beric, Thoros, or Rhaelor himself is anyone's guess. Beric looks at the corpses littering the riverbank, recognizes faces he was speaking with that morning. Lord Mallory, Sir Raymond, so many others. We failed. You died, Thoros says again, as if he needs to keep repeating it to believe it. The mission became irrelevant when you died. But I am not dead now. Beric touches his chest again, reassuring himself the wound has truly closed. If the Lord of Light brought me back, there must be a reason. Thoros feels the weight of those words. The implication, this is not a reprieve, not a lucky escape. This is conscription by divine authority. Beric Dondarrion has been drafted into service by powers that do not accept refusal. We cannot return to King's Landing, one of the surviving soldiers says carefully. They will think us deserters, or worse, collaborators. The mission failed. Most of us are dead. Who would believe what happened here? The practical reality settles over them. They are outlaws now, whether they choose to be or not. Too few to continue the mission against Gregor. too scattered to return in any official capacity. The War of the Five Kings is beginning to tear the realm apart. In the chaos, 20 men and a resurrected lord will simply disappear into the cracks. Unless they choose not to disappear. Beric looks at Thoros, the priest who brought him back, the drunk who found faith. "You said, Ruhlor," answered, "that I am here for a reason." "What reason?" Thoros shakes his head. "I do not know. But the Lord of Light does not waste miracles. Whatever purpose you serve, it is not yet complete." Around them, the riverlands burn. Refugees flee. Armies clash. The innocent suffer, while those with power prey upon them. The very injustice that Eddard Stark sent Beric to combat continues unchecked. Beric makes a decision that will define what remains of his life. However many lives that turns out to be, then we continue. Not for the king, not for Lord Stark, but for them. He gestures toward the refugees they passed on the road, the burned villages, the small folk with no one to protect them from the armies tearing their homeland apart. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We punish those who prey on the innocent. We bring justice to a land that has forgotten what justice means. The survivors look at each other. They are few. They are exhausted. They are traumatized by what they witnessed. But they are also standing beside a man who died and returned, who bears visible proof that powers beyond mortal understanding have taken an interest in this fight. One by one, they nod. They accept. Not because they fully understand. Not because it makes tactical sense, but because they just watched the impossible become reality, and in a world where that can happen, perhaps other impossibilities become achievable too. Thoros steps forward, places his hand on Beric's shoulder. "I will follow you. Wherever this path leads, I brought you back. That makes me responsible for what comes next." "We are all responsible," Beric says. His voice carries new weight, not quite authority, something stranger, the certainty of someone operating under divine mandate. "The Lord of Light has given me another chance. I intend to use it well." He does not mention the small things already fading from his memory. His mother's lullaby, which she sang every night when he was a child. The exact layout of Blackhaven's great hall. Faces of childhood friends whose names he can recall, but whose features blur when he tries to picture them. The cost of resurrection has already begun, but Beric Dondarrion does not yet understand how much he will ultimately pay. How many times the fire will drag him back. How little will remain after the flames have burned through him again and again. For now he simply knows he has been given purpose, and purpose, he is about to learn, can sustain a man even when everything else has been stripped away. 20 men cannot defeat armies, cannot restore order to a realm tearing itself apart, cannot bring Gregor Clegane to justice or reverse the tide of war washing over the riverlands. But 20 men can save one village, can stop one raiding party, can hang one war criminal. And if you save one village today, another tomorrow, another the day after, eventually you are no longer 20 men fighting an unwinnable war. You are something larger, something that grows through reputation and necessity until it becomes a force that even kings must acknowledge. The early days prove brutal. Beric's survivors have no base, no supplies, no support from any established power. They live in the forests like outlaws because technically they are outlaws. The mission that gave them legal authority died with most of their company at the Mummer's Ford. They ambush supply trains, taking food and weapons, not stealing. Beric insists, but requisitioning from armies that are stealing from the small folk anyway. A fine moral distinction that helps them sleep at night. The first village they save happens almost by accident. They stumble across a raiding party, 8 men wearing Lannister colors, in the process of burning a hamlet too small to even have a name. The raiders are dragging women from their homes while children scream and men too old to fight effectively try to defend their families with farming tools. Beric does not hesitate, does not calculate odds or consider tactics, simply draws his sword and charges. The fight is brief and vicious. 8 raiders against 20 soldiers trained in proper combat. The outcome never hangs in doubt. What matters is what happens after. The villagers expect their saviors to demand payment, or claim the right to loot what the raiders would have taken, or simply move on, leaving them to rebuild as best they can. Instead, Beric helps them put out fires, shares the group's limited food supplies, leaves them the weapons and coin taken from the dead raiders. Use it to defend yourselves, he tells the village elder. The next raiders might not be interrupted. The elder, a weathered man who has survived more hardships than any person should, stares at Beric like he is trying to solve a puzzle. Who are you? What house? I was Lord Beric Dondarrion of Blackhaven, Beric says. The past tense comes naturally now. Now I am just Beric, and these are just men trying to do right in a world gone wrong. The story spreads. Villagers talk to each other, trade rumors along with goods. Within weeks, the tales begin circulating. A dead lord who walks again, a band of warriors who take nothing, demand nothing, but fight for the small folk. The Lightning Lord, some call him, remembering House Dondarrion's sigil. More survivors find them. A Stark man who escaped another battle. 3 Tully soldiers who cannot return home because their liege lord has been captured. A deserter from the Lannister army who witnessed one atrocity too many and fled rather than participate. Beric accepts them all, asks only one question. Will you protect the innocent and punish the guilty, regardless of what banner they fly? Those who answer yes, join. Those who hesitate are sent on their way with no hard feelings. The Brotherhood, as they have begun calling themselves, requires absolute commitment to its purpose. There is no room for ambiguity when fighting a war against everyone. By the time they find the Hollow Hill, the group has swelled to nearly 50 members. The cave system, hidden deep in the Riverlands wilderness, becomes their base through pure chance. They are fleeing a Lannister patrol when Tom of Seven Streams, a singer who joined them 2 weeks prior, remembers hearing about caves in the area from childhood stories. The caves prove better than anyone hoped, large enough to shelter not just fighting men, but refugees, defensible, with multiple entrances and natural choke points. Weirwood roots grow through the ceiling in places, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that the Red Priest Thoros insists shows Rilla's favor. The Brotherhood settles in, establishes patterns, creates systems. And Guy, a common-born archer who won the tournament at King's Landing, but received no lands or title for it, becomes their scout and sniper. His skill with a bow borders on supernatural. He can put an arrow through a man's eye at distances that should make accurate shooting impossible. Lem, a former soldier whose yellow cloak earns him the name Lemon Cloak, becomes Beric's unofficial second, blunt, brutal, but absolutely loyal, the kind of man who will do ugly work when ugly work needs doing. Harwin, one of the original Stark men, serves as the link to their past mission. A reminder that they started this for Lord Eddard's justice, even if they continue it for their own reasons now. Tom of Seven Streams proves invaluable as a spy. Singers go everywhere, are welcomed everywhere, hear everything. He gathers intelligence while performing in taverns and camps, then returns to share what he has learned. The Brotherhood develops a reputation for fair trials. When they capture raiders or war criminals, they do not simply execute them. Witnesses are called. Evidence is presented. Beric sits in judgment, listening to testimony before pronouncing sentence. The guilty hang. Always no ransoms accepted. No matter how noble the family. No mercy for those who prey on the innocent. But the trials ensure that innocence, when proven, is respected. Word of this spreads too. Creates a strange dynamic where even enemies grudgingly respect the Brotherhood's integrity. They may be outlaws, but they are honest outlaws. More honest, some mutter, than the lords who claim legal authority. Beric's second death comes during a skirmish with the Lannister outriders. An arrow catches him in the throat, severing something vital. He drowns in his own blood on the forest floor, choking and gasping as his vision tunnels to black. Thoros performs the prayer with desperate faith. The words come easier now. He has done this once before, knows it is possible. But that does not make it certain. When fire spreads through Beric's corpse again, when the throat wound seals itself and breath returns, Thoros weeps with relief. The other Brotherhood members who witnessed it fall to their knees in awe. But Beric, when he wakes, knows immediately that something has changed. He tries to remember his mother's face, and cannot picture the woman who gave him birth. The knowledge that she existed remains, but the image has burned away. It takes something each time, he tells Thoros later, when they are alone. His voice is raspier now, damaged by the throat wound even though the wound itself has closed. I can feel pieces missing. Should I not bring you back next time? Thoros asks, terrified of the answer. You must, Beric says firmly, whatever the cost. The Lord brought me back for a purpose. Until that purpose is complete, I have to keep serving. The Brotherhood grows to 100 members, then 150, becomes a genuine military force in the Riverlands, not large enough to face armies in open battle, but significant enough to disrupt operations, protect territories, make themselves impossible to ignore. They operate without banners, except Beric's lightning, without loyalty to any king or cause, except justice for the small folk, without thought of reward or recognition, beyond knowing they made the world slightly less terrible today than it was yesterday. Beric's legend grows alongside the Brotherhood, the man who cannot die, the lightning lord who rises again and again, Rislaw's chosen champion in Westeros. But those who know him best see the cost accumulating, see memories fading, see pieces of the man replaced by something else, something more symbol than person, more mission than individual. He does not complain, does not regret, simply continues serving the purpose that has become his entire existence. The Brotherhood without banners has been born, and at its heart stands a man in the process of dying by inches, held together by divine fire and absolute conviction that some causes matter more than the self. The War of the Five Kings devours Westeros. Robb Stark crowns himself king in the north. Joffrey Baratheon sits the Iron Throne in King's Landing. Renly Baratheon declares himself the rightful king. Stannis Baratheon contests his brother's claim. Balon Greyjoy crowns himself king of the Iron Islands. 5 kings, each convinced of their own legitimacy. Their armies march, clash, burn everything between them. The Riverlands, positioned between most of these powers, becomes the primary battlefield. Armies pass through like locusts, consuming everything. What one side does not burn, another loots. What survives looting gets requisitioned. What escapes requisition gets destroyed, simply because soldiers far from home take out their frustrations on whoever is convenient. Through this hell walks Beric Dondarrion, dying repeatedly, rising repeatedly, becoming less human and more legend with each resurrection. His third death occurs during an ambush that goes wrong. A Lannister knight proves quicker than expected, drives his sword through Beric's belly, perforating intestines and other organs that do not forgive such treatment. Beric collapses, gut-stabbed and dying slowly, Thoros finds him hours later. The body has already cooled. Death is absolute, but the prayer still works. Fire still spreads. Life still returns. When Beric wakes, he cannot remember his father's face, cannot recall the man who raised him, taught him to hold a sword, prepared him to inherit Blackhaven. The knowledge that he had a father remains. The emotional connection to that relationship has burned away like morning fog. His fourth death proves even more traumatic. Freys capture him after a village defense goes poorly. They recognize the Lightning Lord and decide to make an example. Hang him from a roadside tree, neck snapping with the drop, leave his body swinging as a warning to others who might resist. Tom of Seven Streams cuts him down 2 days later, brings the corpse back to Thoros. The Red Priest looks at the body, at the grotesque angle of the neck, at the bloated face, and nearly refuses. Surely this is too much. Surely the Lord of Light cannot repair damage this severe. But he prays anyway. Has to try. Cannot abandon his friend to final death without making the attempt. Fire spreads. Bones crack back into alignment. Flash repairs itself with sounds that make hardened outlaws turn away in disgust. Beric returns, but this time, when he searches his memories, entire sections of his childhood have vanished. He knows he grew up in Blackhaven, but cannot remember what the castle interior looked like. Knows he had siblings, but cannot recall their names or faces. How much can I lose and still be myself? He asks Thoros one night. The Red Priest has no answer. The fifth death comes from a lance through the back, cowardly strike from a mounted knight during a running battle. Beric goes down hard, lung punctured and filling with blood, drowns internally while his men fight around him. Fifth resurrection. Fifth return. Fifth payment extracted. This time, his first love disappears from memory. Cannot remember her name, her face, the way she laughed. Knows intellectually that he must have experienced romantic attraction at some point, but cannot access the actual memories. The sixth death, the most dramatic, costs him his eye. The Brotherhood has grown to over 200 members by this point, operating across the Riverlands with impunity, feared by all armies, loved by the small folk, a genuine third faction in the regional conflict. Beric's weapon has evolved too. He now carries a proper longsword rather than whatever blade he can scavenge. Before each battle, he performs a ritual that has become his signature. Cutting his palm, blood welling, gripping the blade. Lord of Light, defend us. Flames erupt along the steel. Real fire, hot enough to sear flesh, fed by whatever magic flows through Beric's resurrected body. The flaming sword becomes his symbol. Light cutting through darkness, fire against evil. The sight terrorizes enemies. Many break and run before the fighting even begins. Others stand their ground but fight poorly, distracted by the impossibility of a burning blade that does not consume itself. Beric wields it with skill that transcends his physical degradation. He is thinner now, gaunt, scarred across chest and throat and belly, voice barely above a whisper, but muscle memory survives when other memories fade. The sword still moves with deadly precision. During these years of constant warfare, patterns emerge. The Brotherhood does not just fight, they rebuild, help villagers plant crops, adjudicate disputes, provide the basic functions of governance that have collapsed under the weight of war. Refugees flock to Hollow Hill, orphans, widows, men too old to fight but too stubborn to die. The caves become a sanctuary where the rules of the outside world do not apply, where Lannister and Stark can shelter together because inside these walls those distinctions mean nothing. Beric presides over it all, like a skeletal saint, thin to the point of emaciation, scars layering upon scars. the empty eye socket where his left eye used to be, smoking faintly in dim light as if fire still burns somewhere deep in his skull. That missing eye represents his sixth death and sixth resurrection, killed during a duel with a brave companion, one of the vicious sellswords ravaging the Riverlands. The man's blade caught Beric across the face, destroying the eye and splitting his skull. Should have been fatal, was fatal. Thoros brought him back anyway. When Beric woke, the eye socket had healed closed. No replacement, no covering. Just empty darkness that sometimes glows red when he is angry or when Riola's power flows particularly strong through him. He adjusts to the loss of depth perception through practice, keeps his right side toward enemies during combat, learns to judge distances differently. The physical disability matters less than what it represents. 6 times dead. 6 times returned, 6 pieces of himself burned away in exchange for continued service. What remains? His name, though sometimes he hesitates before remembering it. Beric Dondarrion. The words feel strange in his mouth, like he is claiming an identity that belonged to someone else. His purpose, always his purpose. Protect the innocent, punish the guilty. Serve the Lord of Light, however, the Lord requires. This burns brighter than ever. The core of him that refuses to extinguish. His skills, fighting, leading, judging, the practical capabilities that make him useful. His men, the Brotherhood, they have become his family because he cannot remember his actual family anymore. But gone are the warm memories. The texture of a happy childhood, the sound of his mother singing, the pride in his father's face when he won his first tourney, first kiss, first heartbreak, the name of his favorite horse, what food he preferred, whether he liked summer or winter. All of it burned away in the fires of resurrection, fuel consumed to keep the engine of divine purpose running. Thoros watches his friend disappear piece by piece, feels crushing guilt each time he performs the prayer. Is he saving Beric or destroying him? Does the distinction even matter if Beric chooses this fate willingly? They speak about it only once late one night when neither can sleep. You could stop, Thoros says carefully. Let me die next time. Find peace. Beric considers this seriously. What peace? I remember nothing of who I was before. Going forward is all I have left. If I stop now, everything I have lost was wasted. And if you continue, you will lose more. Then I lose more. Beric's voice, already raspy from the throat wound, carries absolute conviction. The Lord has a purpose for me. I can feel it. Something I am meant to do. Until I do it, I keep serving. The Brotherhood respects him, fears him a little, loves him in the way soldiers love a commander who shares every danger and asks nothing he would not give himself. The small folk venerate him. Saint Beric, some call him, the Lightning Lord who dies for their protection. Prayers to Rylor now include prayers for Beric's continued resurrections. The nobility, the few who acknowledge the Brotherhood's existence officially, view him as a dangerous fanatic. A man with nothing left to lose makes a terrible enemy. One who cannot be killed makes him infinitely worse. By the time Arya Stark stumbles into the Brotherhood's custody, Beric is more myth than man. The Hollow Knight, the Burning Judge, the impossible warrior who rises from death again and again. But underneath the legend, underneath the divine mandate, underneath the mission that has consumed everything else, a small part of Beric Dondarrion still exists, still feels, still questions. That part looks at the young girl with the Stark face and remembers faintly something about honor, about duty, about a man named Eddard who sent him on the mission that killed him the first time. That part will make the final choice. When the time comes, will decide, that one more death, one final sacrifice, can serve a purpose greater than all the others combined. But that moment has not arrived yet, for now Beric continues his work, burning from within, the fading from himself, serving with absolute dedication, the only thing he has left. Purpose, pure and simple, the fire that keeps him walking when the man has almost entirely burned away. There comes a point where a man stops being a collection of memories and becomes simply a function. Beric Dondarrion reaches that point sometime during the long months of 300 AC, though he cannot pinpoint exactly when the transformation completes itself. He wakes in the hollow hill without remembering falling asleep. This happens frequently now. Time behaves strangely when your sense of self keeps fragmenting. Minutes feel like hours. Days vanish entirely. The continuity that most people take for granted, the thread connecting one moment to the next, frays and breaks. Lemon Cloak speaks to him about a raid they conducted 3 days prior. Beric nods along, pretending recognition. He has no memory of the raid, none whatsoever. His mind offers only blankness where those hours should reside. But his body remembers. New bruises mottle his arms, fresh cuts stripe his hands. Muscle soreness suggests recent combat. The physical evidence proves he participated even if conscious recollection has already burned away. He tries to remember Blackhaven and finds nothing. The castle where he spent his entire childhood up to age 21 has vanished from his mind as completely as if it never existed. He knows intellectually that it stands somewhere in the Dornish marches, knows it belongs to House Dondarrion, but he could not describe a single room, could not navigate its halls if transported there blindfolded. His family exists as pure abstraction, father, mother, siblings, whose exact number he cannot recall. Were there 3, 4? The information has simply evaporated, leaving behind only the vague awareness that blood relatives exist somewhere. What remains feels less like a person and more like a weapon that happens to think. His hands remember how to hold a sword, even when his mind cannot remember learning. His body moves through combat forms perfected over years of practice he can no longer access. The skills persist. The context has burned away. The physical deterioration matches the mental. 6 deaths have left their mark on flesh, as surely as on memory. He is skeletal now, ribs visible beneath skin stretched too tight, arms corded with muscle, but no fat whatsoever, the kind of thinness that comes from burning too hot for too long. Scars layer upon scars across his torso, the chest wound from the lance. The throat wound from the arrow, the belly wound from the sword, the neck distortion from hanging, the back wound from the spear, the massive scar splitting his shoulder and chest from the hound's blow. Each tells a story of death. Each marks a payment extracted. The missing eye draws the most attention. The empty socket smokes faintly in darkness, as if embers still burn somewhere deep in his skull. When he grows angry, which happens rarely now, a red glow manifests in that hollow space. Rurl's fire finding expression through the wound. He no longer covers it. Let people see what service to the divine costs. Let them understand that miracles demand sacrifice. His voice has degraded to barely above a whisper. The throat wound damaged something fundamental in his vocal apparatus. Speaking requires effort. Shouting proves nearly impossible. He communicates as much through gesture and expression as through words. The Brotherhood has learned to read him. A certain tilt of his head means agreement. A particular gesture indicates tactical retreat. They function around his limitations because those limitations do not diminish his effectiveness as a leader. He still judges fairly, still listens to testimony with patience, still separates genuine criminals from soldiers simply following orders. The core of justice that defines the Brotherhood flows through him as strongly as ever. Perhaps more strongly, with personal desires and individual identity stripped away. Nothing remains to compromise his judgment. No family connections to sway him. No political calculations to consider. Only the pure question of guilt or innocence, crime or circumstance. The men respect this. Some even prefer it. A judge without bias is rare in Westeros. A judge without any personal interest whatsoever might be unique. But those who knew him before, the handful who survived the Mummer's Ford, grieve for what has been lost. Harwin sometimes tries to engage him in conversation about the early days, about Lord Stark, about the mission that started all of this. Beric participates in these conversations with academic interest. Harwin speaks of events Beric apparently experienced but cannot remember. It feels like hearing stories about a stranger who happened to share his name. "Do you remember anything from before?" Harwin asks one evening, unable to hide the sadness in his voice. Beric considers the question seriously. "I remember that I must protect the innocent and punish the guilty. I remember the Lord of Light has a purpose for me. I remember my name, though sometimes I wonder if it truly belongs to me anymore. That's all. That is enough." Thoros maintains faith that this suffering serves greater purpose. The Red Priest has become Beric's constant shadow, always nearby, always ready to perform the prayer, if death claims him again. The bond between them transcends normal friendship. Resurrector and resurrected, priest and miracle. Two men bound by divine fire, into roles neither fully understands. Late at night, when most of the Brotherhood sleeps, Beric sometimes sits alone in the deepest part of the hollow hill. Weirwood roots twist through the cave ceiling here, creating shadows that move in ways shadows should not move. He tries to remember, pushes against the blankness where his past should be. Occasionally, fragments surface. A smell that triggers no associated image, an emotion without context. The ghost of a memory so faded that he cannot determine if it is real or imagined. These moments prove more painful than the deaths themselves. At least, death offers clarity. The absolute knowledge that you have stopped. But these fragmentary, almost memories suggest something precious has been lost. Something he should mourn, but cannot quite grasp. His reflection in still water shows a stranger, gaunt face, white hair in patches, empty eye socket, scars everywhere, voice like wind through dead leaves. He looks at this image and feels no recognition, no connection to the young lord who rode north from King's Landing believing justice would prevail. That young lord died at the Mummer's Ford. What returned, what keeps returning, is something else. A vessel, an instrument, a sword wielded by hands more divine than human. The thought brings neither despair nor peace, simply acceptance. This is what he has become. This is what service demands. The small folk who pray to him, who speak his name with reverence, would be disappointed to know how little remains of the man they venerate. But the mission continues regardless. Villagers still need protection. Criminals still need judgment. The innocent still require someone willing to stand between them and the darkness. Beric Dondarrion, or the thing wearing that name, continues to stand, continues to fight, continues to die and return. Until the Lord of Light decides otherwise. Until the purpose reveals itself. Until the final death that will not reverse. He can feel that approaching, not through prophecy or vision, simply through intuition sharpened by repeated resurrection. The tool is being honed toward specific use. The weapon forged through repeated breaking and remaking serves particular purpose. When that moment arrives, he will embrace it, not from desire for ending, but from acceptance of function. This is what he has become. This is enough. The girl radiates fury like a campfire, radiates heat. Arya Stark, though she refuses to give her true name at first, carries herself with the barely contained violence of someone who has witnessed too much horror too young, 11 years old, and already hardened by war in ways that should be impossible. The Brotherhood captures her, along with 2 companions, Gendry, a bull-strong apprentice blacksmith with no idea his father was King Robert, Hot Pie, a baker's boy from Flea Bottom who desperately wants to go home but has no home left to return to. They bring the children to the Hollow Hill, standard procedure for any travelers found wandering the war-torn Riverlands, determine if they are threats, spies, or simply victims of circumstance, provide food and shelter regardless, decide what happens next based on their stories. Beric studies the girl as she is brought before him. Something in her face triggers a fragment of recognition. Not memory exactly, more like the echo of memory, a familiarity he cannot quite source. She glares at him with open hostility, takes in his scarred appearance, his empty eye socket, his skeletal frame, shows no fear whatsoever. "What do you want?" "Your name," Beric says. His whisper voice forces people to lean in to hear him. A disadvantage in battle, an advantage in interrogation, and your business in the Riverlands. She lies at first, calls herself Ari, claims to be traveling to Riverrun to find her mother. Technically true, but deliberately incomplete. Beric lets her spin the deception, waits patiently. His remaining eye, that distinctive purple, studies her with uncomfortable intensity. Finally, Harwin steps forward. The old Stark man-at-arms looks at the girl more carefully. Recognition dawns. "Gods, you are Arya. Arya Stark, Lord Eddard's daughter." The name hits Beric like a physical blow. Eddard Stark. The fragment of memory solidifies slightly. The hand of the king. The man who sent him on the mission. The friend. "Lord Eddard," Beric says slowly, testing the words. "He was a friend to me." Arya's hostility wavers slightly. "You knew my father?" "He sent me to bring Gregor Clegane to justice. I failed that mission." Beric touches his chest where the first death wound scarred. "But I remember him as an honorable man. That memory has not left me, though many others have." Something in Arya's face crumples slightly. The mention of her father, combined with this strange scarred lord, speaking of him with respect, cracks her defensive shell. They killed him, Joffrey. They cut off his head. The news strikes like a sword thrust. Beric has suspected Ned might be dead. The war's progression suggested it, but confirmation still hurts in the distant way. All hurts register now, like pain happening to someone else that he observes rather than experiences. "Then we have both lost much to this war," Beric says quietly. Over the following days, Arya stays with the Brotherhood, watches them operate, sees the trials where Beric judges captured raiders with scrupulous fairness, witnesses the executions when guilt proves certain, observes how they treat the small folk with respect rather than contempt. She begins to understand these are not ordinary outlaws. They serve something larger than themselves. Then the Hound arrives. Sandor Clegane, captured by Brotherhood scouts while traveling with Arya as his captive after taking her from the Hollow Hill. The massive warrior, brother to the mountain, brings complicated history with him. Arya erupts with rage when she sees him bound and brought before Beric. "I killed Micah, the butcher's boy. He murdered an innocent child at Joffrey's command." The accusation hangs heavy in the cave. The Brotherhood knows of Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Killer, yes. Monster, perhaps, but not his brother. Sandor never raped or murdered for pleasure, simply followed orders and survived by being more dangerous than those who would destroy him. The trial proceeds with the Brotherhood's usual thoroughness. Witnesses speak. Arya testifies about Micah's death. Others detail crimes committed while Sandor served the Lannisters. Sandor does not deny the charges. I killed the boy. Joffrey ordered it. I followed orders. That is what I do. Following orders does not absolve guilt, Beric says. Then hang me and be done with it. Sandor's scarred face shows no fear, or give me trial by combat. I claim that right. The ancient custom, letting the gods decide guilt through violence, but Beric considers refusing. But the Brotherhood has promised to honor Westeros's old laws, and trial by combat stands among the oldest. I accept, Beric says. I will stand as the Brotherhood's champion. The cave transforms into an arena. Brotherhood members form a circle. Torches are lit. The atmosphere crackles with anticipation. Beric prepares with quiet ritual, draws his sword, cuts his palm with deliberate precision. Blood wells. He grips the blade, smearing the steel. Lord of Light, defend us, for the night is dark and full of terrors. Fire erupts along the blade, true flame, hot and bright. The sword burns without consuming itself, fueled by whatever magic flows through Beric's resurrected body. Sandor's face goes pale beneath his scars. Everyone knows his history. His brother Gregor holding his face to a brazier when they were children. The permanent disfigurement. The lifelong terror of fire that no amount of combat experience can overcome. But the Hound does not back down. Fear might grip him. Fear might grip him. Fear might trigger childhood nightmares. But Sandor Clegane has never fled from anything except the Battle of the Blackwater. And even that was more tactical retreat than cowardice. They circle each other in the firelit cave. Beric moves with predatory grace despite his physical deterioration. The flaming sword leaves trails of light in the air. Sparks fall like rain. Sandor attacks first. His massive sword descends in an overhead chop that would split a normal man in half. Beric sidesteps with minimal movement. Economy of motion that speaks to his skill even in a degraded body. The fight develops into something almost beautiful. Beric's technique against Sandor's raw power. The flaming sword dancing and weaving. The great sword smashing and crushing. Fire and steel in a deadly ballet. Sandor's fear of the flames works against him. He flinches when the burning blade passes close, overcompensates, creates openings that Beric exploits with precise cuts that draw blood without disabling. But fear can also sharpen focus, can drive a man to desperation, can make him dangerous in ways calm confidence never achieves. Beric presses too hard, overextends a thrust aimed at Sandor's throat. For just a moment, his guard drops. Sandor's counter comes with all his considerable strength behind it. The great sword rises and falls like judgment itself, catches Beric across the shoulder and chest, splits through armor, through flesh, through bone. The wound is catastrophic. Arterial blood sprays in a fountain. Beric's flaming sword clatters to the stone floor, flames dying instantly. He follows it down, collapsing in a spreading pool of his own blood. Dead. Absolutely and completely dead. No one survives having their chest cavity opened like that. Arya watches in horror. She wanted the Hound defeated, but not like this. Not by killing this strange lord who spoke kindly of her father. Thoros rushes forward, falls to his knees beside Beric's corpse. The Brotherhood surrounds them, but the Red Priest sees no one except his friend. His hands shake as he places them on the massive wound. Blood soaks his robes. The ruby at his throat pulses with inner light. Lord of Light, we offer you this man, this good man. Let him serve you still. The prayer comes with absolute faith, passionate desperation, the certainty born from performing this miracle 6 times before. Fire spreads through Beric's corpse. The wound begins closing with smoke and the smell of burning flesh, impossible flesh, knitting back together through means that violate every natural law. Arya stumbles backward, hand over her mouth. Gendry catches her before she falls. They watch as death reverses itself before their eyes. Beric gasps, eyes flying open. The purple eye and the empty socket. His back arches as life floods back into dead tissue. The scream that tears from his throat speaks of agony beyond description. Then he sits up, chest healed except for a fresh scar added to the collection, breathing hard, looking around with the confusion that always follows resurrection. "What happened?" his whisper voice barely carries. "You died," Thoros says, relief and grief warring in his expression. "You died and Rulor brought you back, again." Sandor Clegane stares in absolute horror. "What is he?" "The Lord of Light's chosen," Thoros says firmly. "And the gods have judged. You won the combat. You are innocent in their eyes." Beric struggles to his feet with help from Lem and Harwin, studies Sandor with his remaining eye. "The Lord allowed me to fall. That is judgment enough. You are free to go." The trial by combat has spoken. Divine will has been expressed. Whatever crimes Sandor committed, the gods have weighed his soul and found it worthy of life. Arya cannot accept this, screams her protests, but the Brotherhood's law is absolute. The gods have judged. The matter is closed. Sandor leaves, taking Arya with him as insurance against pursuit. She fights and curses but cannot escape his strength. As they disappear into the night, Beric touches his chest where the new scar has formed, tries to remember what Blackhaven looked like, and finds even less than before. The seventh resurrection has taken more, always more, but the purpose continues. Whatever that purpose is, it approaches rapidly now. He can feel it like pressure building before a storm breaks. The news reaches the Brotherhood in fragments, as all news does during wartime. Whispers from refugees, tales from travelers, stories too horrible to believe but too consistent to dismiss. The Red Wedding. At the Twins in the castle of House Frey, Robb Stark was murdered, betrayed under guest right, the most sacred law in Westeros. The king in the north, his mother Catelyn, his bannermen, his personal guard, all slaughtered during what should have been a wedding feast. The Freys and Lannisters orchestrated it together, planned the massacre, locked the doors, and killed everyone. Violated every law of hospitality. Committed an atrocity so profound that even in a land numbed by years of war, people speak of it with horror. Beric hears the reports with that distant feeling all emotion registers now. Robb Stark, dead. The boy king he never met. The son of Eddard, the man who sent him on his final living mission. But Catelyn Stark, wife to Eddard, mother to that girl Arya, who passed through their protection. By all accounts, she died worst of all. Throat cut, body thrown in the river, 3 days in the water before anyone found her. The Brotherhood scouts discover the body before Frey men can properly dispose of it, pull it from the green fork bloated and decaying, bring it to the hollow hill because they do not know what else to do with the corpse of a queen. They lay her before Beric. The sight proves difficult even for men hardened by war's brutality. 3 days dead, throat gaping open nearly to the spine, face clawed by her own nails in death agony, hands still frozen in claws. Everything that was Catelyn Stark has fled this meat. Nothing remains but corruption and decay. Thoros looks at the corpse and feels his faith waver. "No, Beric, you cannot." But Beric kneels beside the body, touches the cold flesh with one hand. He knows what Thoros means, knows what the Red Priest fears. She is Eddard's wife. Beric says quietly. Eddard Stark sent me on the mission that killed me, gave me purpose. Even if he did not intend to, I owe the Starks a debt. You owe them nothing, Thoros insists, his voice rising. And this is too far gone. 3 days. 3 days in water. Whatever comes back will not be her. Perhaps not. Beric studies the ruined face, tries to imagine what she looked like alive. Cannot quite manage it, but I must try. The Lord has brought me back 7 times. Why? For what purpose? This is the purpose. The certainty settles over him like armor. Everything has led to this moment. Every death, every resurrection, every piece of himself burned away, all of it preparation for this singular act. It will kill you, Thoros says desperately. Truly kill you. No resurrection. The fire will leave you entirely. I know. Beric's whisper voice carries absolute peace. I have died 6 times already. I barely remember who I was. What remains is not life, not truly, just borrowed time that needs repaying. He looks up at Thoros, the priest who has become his closest friend, the drunk who found faith, the man who dragged him back from death again and again. You have given me so much, Beric says. 6 lives, 6 chances to serve. Now I return the gift. 1 life for another. Thoros is weeping openly. Please do not do this. The Lord brought me back for a reason. This is the reason. Beric positions himself beside Catelyn's corpse. The Starks have always been kind. This is the only kindness I have left to give. Around them the Brotherhood gathers in silence. They understand what they are witnessing. Their Lord, their lightning Lord, the man who cannot die, choosing final death. Lemon Cloak removes his yellow cloak, offers it to cover Catelyn's body afterward, a gesture of respect. Harwin bows his head in prayer to gods old and new, and Gui clutches his bow like it might anchor him against what comes next. Beric places his hands on either side of Catelyn's ruined throat, closes his eye, begins to pray in words Thoros taught him years ago. Lord of Light, I offer you myself. Take my fire, take my life. Let it kindle in this woman. Let her serve you as I have tried to serve. The air grows thick, heavy. The temperature rises as if summer has suddenly intensified. Beric's scars begin to glow. Smoke rises from the wounds crisscrossing his body. He leans down, presses his mouth to Catelyn's corpse in the Red Priest's kiss. The transfer of life from living to dead. Fire flows out of him like water from a broken dam, visible as red light traveling from his lips to hers, from his chest to hers, from every wound on his body into the gaping throat wound on hers. The cost is immediate and absolute. Beric's skin goes gray, his eye dulls. The slight warmth that sustained his resurrected body drains away like water through sand. But Catelyn's corpse begins to change, color creeping back into dead flesh, the throat wound closing, not healing properly, never healing properly, but sealing enough that breath might pass through. Beric pulls back, his hands fall limp to his sides, he slumps sideways, no longer having strength to maintain position. Thoros catches him. No, no, please, Beric, stay. I do not remember, Beric whispers. His voice has faded to almost nothing. Do not remember who I was, but I know who I am. I am the man who dies so others can live. His eye closes, his chest stills. The fire that sustained him through 7 resurrections finally exhausts itself completely. Beric Dondarrion dies, his 7th and final death, not in battle, not protecting villagers or hanging raiders, but giving every last ember of his borrowed life to a woman he barely knows, repaying a debt to a man whose face he cannot remember. The body cools rapidly, becomes just a corpse, no different from the thousands of other corpses littering the riverlands. Except this corpse has saved countless lives, has brought justice to the lawless, has stood as proof that some men will sacrifice everything for those who cannot protect themselves. Then Catelyn gasps. The corpse that was dead for 3 days shudders. Hands that were frozen in claws move. Eyes that were glazed and empty focus. But what sits up is not Catelyn Stark, not the woman who loved her husband and children, not the mother who tried to protect her family. This thing wears her face but holds none of her warmth, only hate, only vengeance, only the burning need to make Freys and Lannisters pay for the Red Wedding. Lady Stoneheart rises, and with her rising, something good dies in the Brotherhood. She looks around the cave with dead eyes, sees Beric's corpse, shows no gratitude, no recognition of the sacrifice, simply reaches for her ruined throat and makes a sound like gravel grinding. One word, raspy and terrible. Phrase. The Brotherhood has a new leader, but they have lost something irreplaceable. Beric led with justice tempered by mercy. Stoneheart knows only revenge. Thoros cradles Beric's body, rocks back and forth, knows he could try the prayer, could attempt to bring him back again. But he does not, cannot. The fire has left Beric entirely, transferred to the thing that wears Catelyn's face. There is nothing left to resurrect, just empty flesh that deserves rest. I am sorry, Thoros whispers to his dead friend. I am so sorry. You deserved better than this. The Brotherhood begins to change that very night. Stoneheart issues commands in her broken voice. Hang all Freysey. Hang all Lannisters. Hang anyone who served them. No trials, no mercy, only rope. Some members leave, cannot follow this path, cannot abandon the principles Beric died upholding. Others embrace it. The Red Wedding demands red justice. Blood for blood, death for death. The Brotherhood without banners survives, but its soul has been replaced. Justice corrupted into vengeance, protection twisted into punishment. The good work Beric built now serves darker purpose. His empty armor hangs in the hollow hill, a memorial to the Lightning Lord, the man who died 7 times and gave his 7th life to create a monster he never knew would emerge. Thoros stays with Stoneheart out of guilt. He brought Beric back 6 times. He created the situation that led to this. He must see it through to whatever end awaits. But late at night, the Red Priest drinks again, trying to forget the look on Beric's face in that final moment, the peace of a man finally released from service. The Lightning Lord is gone. The Hollow Knight has found his rest, and the Riverlands will never know how much light vanished when Beric Dondarrion burned himself out completely to save a woman who did not want saving. The songs spread first. Singers carry tales better than ravens carry messages. Within weeks of Beric's final death, the entire realm knows the story. The Lightning Lord who died 7 times. The Hollow Knight who gave everything. The small folk make him a saint, light candles in his name, pray to both Resurrected and Beric together, as if they are one villages. He saved carved lightning bolts into trees. Parents named children after him. His legend becomes larger than the man ever was. The nobility views him differently. A dangerous revolutionary who rejected his position, an outlaw who built an army against established order. Some respect what he tried to do. Most are relieved he is gone. Red priests across Essos hear the tale and weep. Here was proof. Absolute proof. Ruler can resurrect the dead. Magic has returned to the world. The Lord of Light walks among mortals again. Thoros becomes famous. The priest who performed 7 resurrections. Believers seek him out, demand he teach them, want to learn the prayers that brought a dead man back. He tells them the truth. He does not know how it worked, just spoke words and had faith. The Lord did the rest. Some accept this. Others accuse him of hiding secrets. The Brotherhood fractures. Half follow Stoneheart into darkness, hanging anyone with Frey or Lannister connections. No trials, no mercy, just rope and revenge. The other half scatter, try to continue Beric's actual mission, protecting small folk. Fair trials, justice without cruelty, but without their lord, without his unifying presence, they lack cohesion. Within a year, the Brotherhood without banners exists only in name. Stoneheart commands killers wearing the lightning sigil. The true believers operate alone or in small groups, trying to honor what Beric actually stood for. His sacrifice raises questions that echo through the realm. What does resurrection cost? Each time Beric returned, he lost pieces, memories, personality, humanity itself. By the sixth resurrection, almost nothing remained. Just purpose and a name. Was that still Beric Dondarrion? Or had the original man died at the Mummer's Ford, replaced by something wearing his face? Philosophers debate it in Old Town. Masters study the reports. No clear answer emerges. Perhaps there is no clear answer. Perhaps identity is not binary, but gradual. A ship where every plank gets replaced until nothing original remains, yet it still sails under the same name. Beric proved resurrection is possible. That matters more than anyone realizes at the time. Years later, at the Wall, Jon Snow will die, and he will return. The precedent has been set, the pattern established. Melisandre, another Red Priest, will speak the same prayers Thoros used, will bring back another man who serves larger purpose. The cost will be similar. Jon will lose pieces too, will return changed, harder, colder. But he will return. Because Beric proved it was possible. Because the Lord of Light has use for certain individuals beyond their natural lifespans. The theological implications are massive. If Rola can resurrect the dead, the god is real. Not metaphor, not symbol, actually real and actively intervening in mortal affairs. This changes everything for believers. Proof of divine power. Proof that prayers are heard. Proof that service to the Lord matters. But it also proves the cost of divine service. The Lord of Light does not resurrect casually, does not waste miracles. When he brings someone back, that person becomes a tool, an instrument. Personal desires become irrelevant. Beric accepted this, embraced it even. He understood he was no longer fully himself. Understood pieces were missing. Chose to serve anyway because the mission mattered more than the man. That selflessness defines his legacy. Not the resurrections themselves, not the flaming sword or the battles won, but the willingness to lose himself completely in service to protecting others. The small folk understand this instinctively. They do not care about theology or philosophy. They care that Beric died for them, again and again, gave everything to keep them safe. That is the definition of heroism. Not grand gestures or glorious victories, but quiet sacrifice, choosing others over self, standing when it would be easier to run. Beric never knew the full scope of the Lord's plan, never understood why he was chosen, why resurrection came to him specifically. He served without that knowledge, had faith without requiring explanation. That might be the most important lesson. Serving without needing to understand the complete picture, trusting that purpose exists, even when details remain unclear. His empty armor still hangs in the hollow hill. Stoneheart ignores it. A reminder of weakness, she would say. But those who remember Beric differently visit it, touch the scarred metal, Remember what justice looked like before revenge poisoned it. That flaming sword technique dies with him. No one else can ignite a blade through blood and prayer. Perhaps the magic was specific to Beric. Perhaps it requires something he possessed that others lack. The knowledge is lost, but the symbol remains. A burning sword cutting through darkness. Fire against ice, light against shadow. The image persists in songs and stories, becomes shorthand for righteous combat against evil. Years later, prophecies speak of Lightbringer, the sword that will defeat the long night. Some wonder if Beric's burning blade was connected, a precursor, a hint of what is possible. The truth remains unknowable. Beric is gone. The method died with him, but the inspiration lives on. The riverlands slowly heal after the war's end. Villages rebuild. Children grow up hearing tales of the Lightning Lord, how he protected their grandparents, how he died so they could live. This is immortality, not being remembered by the powerful, but living on in the stories of common people, being the hero they tell their children about, when teaching what honor means. Beric would not recognize himself in these stories. They make him too noble, too perfect, too much the hero from songs he once admired. The reality was simpler. A man doing his best in impossible circumstances, making mistakes, losing himself piece by piece, but never stopping, never giving up, never choosing the easy path. That is enough. More than enough. Some lives matter, not for what they accomplish, but for what they represent. Beric represents the choice to serve, the willingness to sacrifice, the courage to lose yourself for others. His 7 deaths tell a complete story, each one a payment, each resurrection a diminishment, until nothing remained but pure purpose. Then even that was given away. The final death, the 7th death, was not loss, it was completion. The tool used fully, the weapon broken in service, the candle burned down to nothing because it gave all its light. Somewhere beyond death, does Beric rest? Does he remember now what living stripped away? Has the Lord returned those lost pieces, those burned memories? No one knows. The dead do not speak, but those who pray to him hope that after giving so much, he has found peace, that the man who forgot his own face now sees clearly, that the knight who served without understanding now comprehends the full design. The thunder of his legacy echoes still, in every village he saved, in every child who grew up because he fought, in every moment of justice in an unjust world. Lightning flashes and is gone, but thunder rolls forever. Beric Dondarrion was the lightning, brief, brilliant, terrible in its beauty, and the thunder that follows is the sound of people still telling his story, still believing that one person can make a difference, still hoping that sacrifice matters. That hope is his true resurrection, the 7th return, not of flesh, but of inspiration. The Lightning Lord lives on in everyone who chooses to protect rather than pray, to serve rather than rule, to give rather than take. That is the legacy of the resurrected knight. Not that he could not die, but that he chose to die, again and again, until dying meant something, until his death gave life to others. And in the end, what more can anyone hope for?